how do we nurture the call? How do we reclaim our own call? And how do we nurture the call in students and young adults and others who have that gift for music and ministry? And anyway, so one thing leads to another. We do some Zoom calls. And so today, this distinguished panel is going to unpack some of that with us. Aaron Rice is at Gardner-Webb University, and also your latest is your interim at First Baptist Church, Lincolnton, North Carolina. He's interim now. Philippa is at Edenton Street, United Methodist Church in Raleigh, but has been adjunct organ professor at East Carolina. Larry Dickens, long tenured ministry at Snyder Memorial Church in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and more recently, adjunct professor of church music at Campbell. Did I get that right, Larry? And part of the beauty of this model here is that Tyler Ingram, who has served with Larry at Hayes Barton, because Larry is now at Hayes Barton in Raleigh, all these connections. Tyler was his associate at Hayes Barton, but before that, Tyler was in Larry's youth choir at Snyder Memorial Baptist Church in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Tyler Ingram is now at First Baptist Church, Carrollton, Georgia. So this is our distinguished panel, and I'm going to turn it over to Aaron. Let's welcome them.
Well, y'all, it's good. I think I'm on. Am I on? Close enough? Good enough? Maybe? Yes? We're going to have to use handheld? So we'll all use the handheld. Well, it's good to see y'all this morning. Thanks for being bright-eyed and bushy-tailed this morning for us. We've got a handful of questions that we're really going to do just to kind of open our thoughts on calling to ministry, whether that is with a student coming through music and worship ministry, or maybe that's someone who is in a college setting that is grappling with what God's doing in their lives, or potentially even someone who is thinking about second career calling. And so those were the things with which we have dealt with over the last many months of kind of thinking through these things, and I hope that you will enjoy some of the things that we have been thinking about, and we'll see some fruit together today. So I'm going to ask the questions and we'll all kind of chime in on that. So the first question is, what are the skills, personality characteristics, and spiritual habits that we should be looking for in high school and college students that would prompt us to engage a student to consider vocational ministry? So what are those characteristics, skills, attitudes, even habits that a student might have that would say, hey, I see that in you? Tyler, you want to start?
Not really, but I will. One of the things that in my growing up at Snyder and look for now in young people is, I think it's important, we probably would all agree that having fun at church is not the most important thing about church. However, I think with young people, it's important for them to have fun at church, and for those experiences to be positive and formational, yes, but it needs to be memories being made. So I think that's important to keep in mind, that it's a positive experience. It's fun, and yeah, we might do, crazy youth trips here and there, tied in with formational experiences. But it has to be positive and fun, and just has to have those times where you can grow together. So you can then later, maybe on, have those important conversations, go deep and stress their faith in many ways. But if they're not having fun from the start, probably not going to be able to come back much longer.
I agree. And along with that, one of the things that really speaks to me is when I can find a young person who's interested in building relationships. A lot of times, and this is getting much more pronounced as things go along, if the student is just not interested in being there, or if they're constantly on some sort of device, it's really hard for you to make an impact in their life and for them to learn how to make relationships with others. And I think the number one skill that you will need to be a church musician, really that will serve you the most, is the ability to make relationships with people of all ages. So when I see a young person that can, in any way, shape, or form, converse with even a middle-aged person like myself, I think that's a person we need to nurture, because those cross-generational relationships will be like the fabric of being a successful minister of music.
I would just say, add to that, it's relational. Building relationships first. And as we talk more, I think we'll see why that's so important.
Yeah, one of the things that I was thinking about with this question relates again with the relationship part. If a student is engaged in such a way that they're even inviting friends, part of our calling is to welcome others into the fold of Christ, right? And so if these students are already doing that in the 8th grade, in the 9th grade, hey, come be with me in youth choir. Hey, don't you want to come on this trip? This will be really great. Then that to me already says they have the skill level and the ability to say, come go with me, come follow Christ with me, come do this ministry with me. And so that's a huge part of it whenever I'm watching for those early signs. Yes, do they love music? Yes, do they love, all the things, adventure type things at church? But do they have that relational come go with me experience and attitude that is going to really open up doors for music and worship ministry? So that's one of the things that I look for. Next question. What are the settings in which music ministry professionals can most effectively interact with high school and college students to engage with them about the possibility of vocational music and worship ministry? So the settings, Sunday school, youth group, all that kind of thing. What are some of those things specifically?
Well, I will of course say, because youth choir ministry has been a big part of what I've done for a lot of years. So obviously that's going to be my first go-to, but I realize that that's changed, that a lot of churches don't have youth choirs anymore. So I think we're going to have to be a little more creative in partnering with youth ministry professionals and opportunities like that. I thought of another thing. There's a church I used to be at had a weekly prayer breakfast, and it was just kind of a community thing. Bring your friends from school, high school, go to school together, come by the church, we'll have this prayer breakfast thing. I think those kind of places where we can build more relationships outside of our norm, it would be great opportunities.
Yeah, I would say things outside of your regularly scheduled events. Those special things, whether that's camps or tours or on the adult level, bringing in composer in residence, things like that just kind of spark the spirit here and there that you don't get in your normal 9 to 5 days a week schedule, that just kind of impacts your creativity on a different level.
I would echo all of those things, and also add, as an organ teacher, I'm really seeing a resurgence of people interested in learning how to, play the organ or play the piano for their church much later in life, like 60, 70. I had one 8-year-old student. So like much later in life, because there is a certain amount of time that is required to get these new skills and training, and so a lot of those people may be retired or part-time. So if they're starting this, always having that conversation with whoever the student is, wherever they are in their journey, if you're teaching them music or whatever, say, hey, well, do you have a home church? Do you have a church that you're leading in? And getting over that hump to being able to say, like, well, maybe you should start volunteering. Maybe you should start trying to lead worship. Just encouraging them wherever they are to start, because at this point, I don't think we can really only be looking toward like 16-year-olds to be ministers of music any longer. I think we have to be much more open in who we're asking to lead worship, and then much more accepting of getting them involved at the point that they are currently, whatever that is.
And so we've talked about outside of the norm, and both with activities with the church and with potentially parachurch things. And so two things come to mind for me. Whenever I was a high school student, I was very involved in FCA. I was not an athlete, but I was involved with FCA. And I led worship for all the FCA events. I led worship for See You at the Pole in the morning, all those kinds of things. And so I would encourage all of us to partner with our youth ministry professionals, go with them to FCA meetings, go with them to See You at the Pole meetings, because there may be students there that we can encourage. Hey, I see this in you. I see this leadership ability in you. I see the musical skill. What can we do to help empower you to follow potentially a vocational call? And so it's seeing these extracurricular, the parachurch ministries that your youth ministry professional is probably already going to, right? They're already going to lunch with students. They're already going to FCA and those kinds of things to build relationships. So why not tag along with them? That may cause some relational things that we have to do to build capital with that youth ministry those youth ministry folks. But it is really worth it, I think, for us to investigate those opportunities in places outside of the church's walls. And then on the other side, whenever we're talking about our programming, think about whenever we have high and holy moments, those memory-making times in our lives. They're going to be on choir tour. They're going to be whenever we sang the national anthem at the whatever game, and we had all those moments and all those crazy times that the students remember. They love getting on a bus and going somewhere, even if it's in the same county. You know, finding those times where they are making memories is huge for our students. Right? Because if they are making memories, there's also a very good chance that God is working in their lives. And whenever God is moving and working in their lives, whether it's at Passport or it's at All-State Youth Choir, we need to seek opportunities to speak with them. Maybe the Holy Spirit could use us to speak into their lives and to continue to spark some of those things. So parachurch ministry opportunities and opportunities that are more focused, high holy moments or memory-making times in the lives of students. Third question. If we see a student displaying some of the skills and personality characteristics and spiritual habits that could lead to the pursuit of a calling to vocational ministry, what are some of the ways that we can continue to help foster and further clarify that calling, right? To throw some kindling onto the fire.
One of the big programs that we've instituted at my church that's actually been paying amazing dividends in terms of fostering leadership and musical leadership in particular is what we call our Organ Scholar program. And this program was essentially developed because I saw this gift in one student, and he was in 9th grade, and I knew that he was a great pianist, he played the French horn, and he had that ability to make relationships with people of all ages. So essentially, the organist and I alternate giving free organ lessons to this student every other week, and we come up with a donor whose husband was an organist to give a small stipend to help for the student every month. It's nothing groundbreaking, but it's something to say that we believe in your training and we believe in you and your leadership. And we also said that he had to be, whoever it was, had to be a member of our youth choir and our youth handbell program to help lead in that way. So, we came up with all of this, and it really gave him a sense of ownership of being like part of the church staff. He's now done this for 2 years, so he's gotten really amazing now, and he can lead worship. He can play hymns pretty well. He's an active member. He joined our adult group as well, so he's an active member of our adult group, and we've essentially just dropped everything to pour into this one person, because I think if our legacy, Mark Cochran, I feel like if our legacy is this one person to replace us, then we've done our work, because we won't be here forever, and neither will any of us. And so if we have replaced our place in the world and our ability to lead one person, that's what we've done. So we made it a little bit of a financial, just a tiny bit of a financial benefit for them, and a way for a young person to see that working on a church staff is a viable calling and a viable way to be successful. So it's been pretty good so far. And I would encourage you to do whatever it takes to do that, if you can find one person in your group that can do that.
Yeah, providing leadership opportunities for those students is huge. I had my calling experience into ministry the summer before I started college. So I was 18, and even already at that age, in Larry's youth choir, I had been a student conductor. I had led worship on Youth Sunday. In my high school band, they had let me lead the brass band camp. So I had these leadership experiences. So then when I had my calling experience, I didn't have to question whether I knew what that would look like or not, because even in high school, I had already had some of those experiences. And that was so just formational. And of course, that just blossomed through working with Doug and Terry Vansel at First Greensboro. And so by the time I was official as an intern at Hayes Barton, I already had a lot of this experience. I was very comfortable with who I was as a musician, but more so as a minister, even just starting in divinity school. So just giving those opportunities as early as possible as you see those skill sets, I think we all gain from that.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think in the local church, finding those opportunities for students to conduct, for students to play, whether it's organ or whatever instrument they're specializing in. Internships, I think, are incredible ways. And we've just created a new internship for a college student as a choral scholar. And the old model is, we'll sign you up, and a lot of churches do that. But the old model was you got to be there every single week, every single rehearsal. And what I found in talking to people that had that model is they were not even to fill positions anymore, because college students, they weren't going to be committed to be at every single thing you do with a choral group in a church setting. So we had interest in someone who said, I just want to see some young adults doing solos, singing in choirs. And so we created, and actually were able to fund a position for a college student, but they only have to be there 2 Sundays and 2 Wednesdays a month. And we found a Campbell University student that jumped all over it, and she has just blossomed. She's been there, I guess we're in like the 2nd semester. She came in with a great skill set, but very quiet. It was very hard for her to step out, and seeing just in those few months the way she has blossomed has been incredible. So there's probably somebody out there just waiting to give you $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 to say, we're going to create this. I know you laugh, but it happens, believe me. This happened because they had seen us doing endowed chairs for orchestra. So this lady calls after her husband died and said, my husband loves soloists, but we want to do I said, we really don't have that, but we have something we've experimented with a choral scholar. Yeah, I'll do that. And when I told her what it might cost, she said, I'll call you back in a day or two. She called me back an hour later and said, yeah, let's do that. So these things can happen when we make those opportunities available.
Yeah, and to go on the opposite end of the age spectrum, one of the things that I've really been doing over the last couple of years is encouraging the older elementary students in our children's choirs to begin to participate in worship, whether it is reading scripture for the morning or they are leading the Lord's Prayer or those kind of elements. You're giving those children very early opportunities to see what it is like to be a worship leader in the full collective body of Christ. And so you're implanting that desire and that love in them for the worshiping body. Maybe they're not quite there yet. I mean, you're talking 8, 9, 10-year-old children, but still giving them those opportunities and planting those seeds is huge. And their mamas and daddies are so excited for them, and grandma and grandpa are going to come those days. And so not only is that student experiencing these opportunities, but their family is, and then the church body, they go all over those children and just encourage them and say, thank you so much for helping us worship this morning. And so if we are finding ways from, very early on all the way through their formative years, I think it can be very opportunistic for us to seek ways to see them grow and develop and come into God's family and find ways to serve. So as a rule, now we're going back to parents. As a rule, parents want the best for their children and have the greatest impact on their children's career pursuits. Many parents have their own perspectives on what vocational ministry is and the life that music ministry professionals live. How can we educate parents and students in the expectations of a life in ministry?
I think a lot of times parents have they have their own ideas of what they think vocational ministry is. So I would say one of the best things we ever experimented with was creating a lead team that we used to do for children's programs a lot. Sometimes for youth ministry, we created a youth choir lead team so that these parents, and we recruited particularly parents that, they might have a son or a daughter that is maybe thinking about some kind of ministry. enlist the parent to be on your lead team. So they see and hear everything you do. They're with you. They see it up close, and you may just change their perception of what ministry is.
I would say with gentleness, depending on their perspective and their experience in church life, and they may love going to church, but would not think that's a future for them or their children. So certainly with gentleness and being aware, going on that journey with them, not coming from a perspective of, hey, your student's going to do this in their future. Maybe bring it down a notch and say, what's another profession they may like? Oh, they might want to be a teacher. Well, you can do a lot of teaching in the church, just kind of building up slowly. Because depending on the relationship and the family system, they may already have a plan for their children and their future based on their experience. And so you just got to be careful. And sometimes we don't know all those backgrounds and histories of our families as much as we'd like to. So be gentle, but on a journey with them.
I agree, and I've always thought that it's like a multi-layer approach with the families. Like maybe they're not ready to know about the whole journey of being, a minister of music. Maybe they're just ready for the first step. And I've had, just really like lovely little conversations where I'll plant a seed saying, your son and daughter has this gift, and it's so great to see it. And then maybe the next time I'll have another conversation saying, oh, well, they did such an amazing job leading in this way, and they're really using that gift. And so this takes years, to do this, but to talk with the parents about the gifts, how they can be here. And another thing I think is modeling that you yourself are, you're a professional as well. I mean, even if you're part-time or whatever, you're a professional. You're a church music professional. And yes, you have a calling, and yes, you are a minister. But you also have a family in most cases. You have a life. You have continuing education. So just like any other career, modeling that being a minister of music is a career as well. It's a place where they can find fulfillment, they can find challenge. And some parents simply don't understand that. So making it public, that you're going to this Polyphony conference, or making it public that you are taking vacation time to be with your family, so they can start to think, well, this is a life, and my child can also have that said life. And that may take a lot of education, even at the basic level. It tends to be the smaller the church, maybe there is more education needed. But even big churches, these committees who are in charge of whether it's personnel or staff parish relations or whatever your committee is, that you yourself are a professional and that you are worthy of being developed and having this time away for both rest and for development. The more you can do to help people see that and help people value that with resources and then model that for young people is always going to pay dividends.
So I think Tyler said it a minute ago, maybe mom and dad already know what little Henry and Katie Fletcher are going to do when they grow up, right? They're going to follow me into my career, or they're going to go be an accountant. We already have a family business set up. They're going to go do that, right? And then Henry or Katie Fletcher experience some moments where they are struggling with this call to ministry, or they're exhibiting these skills. Well, mom and daddy may want to make sure they are financially stable and that they are secure, and that's my goal. And what we need to do is take time to educate that. Here's the deal. We've all heard of churches that want their ministry staff to survive on the lowest financial means possible. But right now, my experience watching the landscape in North Carolina, there are a lot of churches coming open that have means, right? And they do take care of their staffs well. Many of these staff members have been there for decades. And so what I'm encouraging parents as we're having these conversations, whether they're a college student or even a high school student, hey, listen, you're not going to become, you're not making bank, as the students say, but you're also not scraping the bottom of the barrel. You're going to make a living, and I wouldn't be too concerned about that. And so encourage them to say, okay, there are opportunities for someone to have a full and fulfilling life financially in ministry, and don't be so concerned that they're not going to be able to do that. They're not going to be taking handouts on the side of the road. And so that's one of those things that parents are just like, they're never going to do it. They're never going to be able to make it. And so having those conversations is something that is helpful and just plain old honest. And parents want that.
And even scholarships. I mean,
Yes.
there are so many scholarships at schools or, outside scholarships. All of my degrees were paid for by scholarships or TAs, and it was just an enormous gift. So the community at large was essentially investing in me to do this. It was amazing.
I mean, we talked about on some of the Zoom calls, some of the biggest organ schools in the country don't have students. And so they are clamoring for anybody that has legit piano skills and are like, we'll take you, we'll put you through, and making that financially feasible. And so when you're talking with parents and students, don't let that be a hindrance, but now see it as an opportunity, because a lot of boomers are retiring. There's a lot of good positions opening up. And so now is a great time to get into ministry and those kind of things. So those are some thoughts for us. Let's see, here we are. No one wants to purchase something and experience buyer's remorse. What are practical ways that we can express the joys and the sorrows, tragedy and triumph, promise and pain, challenge and success of the rewarding life in ministry? Right? We've already talked about the professional side, but how do we show that this is a worthy thing? This is a fulfilling thing. I've committed my life to this. It's worth your time.
Founding dean of Campbell Divinity School wrote a book. He really wrote the book as a part of the course he was teaching, and it's called "It's Worth a Life." And the whole book, Mike Cockrell wrote it. The whole book is about this life of ministry. It is worth a life to spend a life doing this call. But what I would say, and I've tried to do this in classes I've taught at Campbell Divinity School, is to tell the truth. Ministry is not always easy. And there are going to be some, and I've had some conversations even this weekend with some of you, that there are going to be some experiences that you just don't even know if you can live through or not. But to tell the truth about that, but to also tell the truth about those mountaintop holy moments, those victories that you experienced. And if you, particularly those of us that have been doing this for a while, and we can say, let me tell you about this chapter. And this chapter was the darkest thing I've ever walked through, but it prepared me for this next chapter. I spent 9 years in South Carolina, and some really great experiences and some tough ones. But I looked back at those 9 years when I moved back to North Carolina. Every one of those experiences prepared me for the wonderful years that I had the next 15 or 20 years. So helping students see that, but just being honest about that is really important.
Just a quick note, I brought that book with me and one other resource that's really good for students who are maybe experiencing that discernment. So if you want to come and take a look at those or take a picture afterwards, feel free. One thing our pastor in Carrollton is really good at is reminding us to share stories. Let's share our theological stories of our people, of our church. It's not just giving all of the truths all the time. We've got to share. We've got to share our table, sit down and talk, whether that's through articles or through various special worship experiences or whatever it is. But just sharing. Don't just do the thing, but you got to tell about doing the thing, because that's how people hear about it. And we have this great choir retreat. Well, I've got 20-some in my choir. That story only stays with those 20-some in those 4 walls of our choir room. What good does it really do in the life of our lowercase church and our uppercase church as well? So continue to share, tell, have lunch, do a little testimony or something to continue to tell our people.
Oh, I agree, and I wonder if it also might be worthwhile to encourage students, if they're thinking about this, this kind of call, answering this call versus doing something else that maybe they don't feel called to, but they feel pressure to do. I wonder if you can get them to talk with you and hear your stories and hear your honesty, and then have them find, someone doing something else and hear what those stories are. My husband is an engineer, and he's very scientific, and he has done all those things, and he gets home, and in the true engineer way, I said, how was it? It was fine. Not good. On fire. Nobody was here today, so it was good. I tell them things that happen in my church sometimes, and truly we've been on fire many times in these stories. And then I'll tell them about some of the amazing things that happen. And there's just an interest and a passion for the highs and lows that I feel like we have as church ministers of music. And in so many other careers, it's something to do to move on with the rest of the life. And truthfully, maybe some of it is a little bit interesting or some of it is not interesting. But if you're hearing the passion in, say, one of the stories that you're telling and the highs and the lows and the engagement in it, that means something to the person who's listening. And so there might trigger something inside of them saying, for better or for worse, I want to feel that connection. I want to feel that relationship with the place I'm working in, the place I'm serving, and the place God wants me to be. And in some ways that helps them make a decision, I think. It's never boring to be in church. It's many things, but not that.
That's true. That's true.
So the relational piece, I think, is the linchpin, right? And so many of you know that if a student is going to come into maybe music and worship ministry, a lot of times their parents are already involved in music and worship ministry. They kind of have that connection, with the experience and the joys of music making. And so one of the things that I try to do is be as open and honest with both my choir, the handbell ensembles, finding people that in the church are interested. Because here's the deal, they'll say, "How you doing, Aaron?" And I'll either say, "Oh, I'm great, thanks," or I can be honest with them. And if you're more honest with them, you're able to sow those seeds of, this is what it's really like. This is what real life is. This is who I am as a person. Here are the things I struggle with. Here are the things that I glory in. And being able to just be honest with them. And that is also true with folks, just your regular old third pew back that's always there. "What'd you think about that one, Aaron?" And it's like, "Oh, it was great." Or, "We could have done a little better." Or, "The youth group trip was awesome. We had tons of students that were really finding their purpose and goals in their life." And so whenever you're building that rapport with folks, that's going to give you the opportunity to really show them, hey, this is what it's like. This is what I experience. And all of our experiences are similar and different. And so if we're honest with that, we can give them a clearer picture, at least from our perspective, what a life in ministry is like. So 69% of Gen Zs surveyed at the end of 2020 said that they are looking for job stability over a job that enables their passions. Listen to that again. 69% of Gen Zs surveyed at the end of 2020 said that they're looking for job stability over a job that enables their passions. How would you describe the stability of the present need for church music ministry professionals versus the supply for those who have surrendered to a call to serve?
That statement that 69% would choose stability over something that pursues their passion breaks my heart.
Yeah.
Because any of you know, to spend a life doing something you're not enjoying is a tragedy. Some of you probably have read some things by Patrick Lencioni, the leadership guru. There's a new instrument called the Working Genius. And you can take the thing in about 10 or 12 minutes. And it's really designed to help identify how you work with others. But what we've discovered is it really can help even high school students discover their strengths and the things they really don't want to spend their life doing. So you end up, there's six possible results. You end up with the two that just like, that's where you really need to live and thrive and use your passions. And two that like, you really don't want to go there. I don't know, as I was kind of brainstorming some of this, we really don't have a vehicle already in the kind of things we do that can help maybe offer something like that, offer something for parents, I want to suggest that maybe we create something new with 5 or 6 churches going together for a weekend for juniors and seniors, parents as well. And we have kind of 2 tracks and 1 track that comes together, and we start offering some things that, okay, they're thinking about where to college, they're going to make a list of college visits. Parents are looking at maybe empty nest, or how do I live with this, this person that I've nurtured for 18 years. They're going to be gone, and I can't control them anymore. Conversations with parents like that. So I want to throw out an idea that maybe we create this new thing that's all about the future. It's all about the next step. I'm not sure what we call it yet, but I could envision 5 or 6 churches going together and creating a weekend for juniors, seniors, and parents and their parents, where we kind of create an opportunity to talk about call, but we talk about using your passions. This has to change. We cannot encourage the next generation to settle for doing something just because it's stability rather than pursuing their passions.
Can you remind me what
Gen Z is
What year is that?
basically, those are the ones that are in upper elementary through high school and some of the young college right now. So right now we're talking those college to
So like an 8-year-old or a 9-year-old?
10 actually. Alpha comes after. Alpha's the next one.
Okay, so a 10-year-old.
10 all the way to college seniors, yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if that percentage is because maybe from age 10 to 18 is the only time you think you can get stability in life, because I think you can come on with this.
Yeah.
Because the older I get, the more I realize, like, no matter what you're doing, you can be unemployed in 1 second, and I assume that's what they're thinking of. So maybe I wonder if some of the education might be around understanding that life is very transient. It's up and down, and the skills that you need to develop are internally to help you keep that sense of stability and purpose and calling. And once you have those skills, it doesn't really matter where you are, because you will use them wherever they are. So that might be, we might need to get a different statistic on that one too. But I mean, again, I think that if we think about the call as a wider thing, as a thing that we're answering, and we serve in a variety of places, whether it's if we have a boring 9-to-5 job that we hate, we're still answering our call there, or doing it bivocationally, or we're answering it much later in life. I think we have to be much wider with thinking of call and stability.
For me, it's easy to get really bogged down and negative in some of the statistics. I think we all seen, higher education, theological education numbers are down across the country, and I mean that's sad. I mean, even the divinity school that I went to 6 years ago has shifted numbers so much. So it's easy to just stay in that camp and just, and then just let it go. But we gotta find the hope. We gotta see those lights. I see Peter and Corwin back here, our Martin Webb Church music students. They were in, I'll say, youth choir a few years ago, were with me, and seeing these young people continue their passion. They're part of the hope. They're the ones who are going against that grain and leaning into who they're called to be, and whatever their profession is down the line. Right now, they're looking at God's calling, and so just being reminded of seeing those stories, seeing those relationships, and being reminded of the bright light that we do have even amongst the scary statistics.
Final question, and we'll have a few minutes between this session and the next. Student says, I feel called to ministry. What's the next step for them? 18 years old. What's the next step? Ready to go.
I say, do you know my friend Aaron Rice at Gardner Webb University? He didn't hear me say that. No, I think you have a conversation celebration. That's got to be positive. Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. You can't hide the reality and talk about those conversations. You got to be honest with them, but it has to be positive. I mean, I had conversations with you, Larry, growing up, Doug and Terry, my parents, just remember all that was so positive, and none of it was jaded or they weren't trying to trick me, but it was so formational. I was like, oh, okay, maybe I am right, even with a little bit of hesitation. Making sure that's celebrated, thinking about what that future could be.
Yeah, and then you do everything you need to do logistically to get them wherever they need to be. So you take them to their auditions. My organ teacher, I moved to Oregon really late. I started my senior year of high school, and Mark Hopper, who now works with me at Edenton Street, was my first organ teacher. And you know, he came to every audition. He came with me and my parents. He just said, okay, well, we make sure that you've got everything that you need to be able to play to go to this place. Okay, oh, you've never played an instrument like that? Well, let me find you another instrument that's similar, and then you would take me there, and we'd have a lesson there. So you just do that, because that's probably more important than you leading Sunday worship, frankly, is more impactful for the long term. And so you just do what you need to do, and you make the time and the space to take them there logistically. The one thing I found teaching in East Carolina these past 2 years and working with high school students is that this kind of nitty-gritty skills of like administration or logistics that you might remember that you had at 16, 17, or 18, many of the students just don't have those. So you may have to help look at essays about whatever, not writing it for them, but helping them say, well, oh, have you considered X, Y, and Z? Pretty aggressive, you'll have to be aggressive, like, oh, I found this scholarship for you, let's try to apply, like, you know, I'll write you. And everything in my head sometimes is screaming, this is their job, they should be doing this. But it takes so much pain, so much communication, so much begging or whatever. It really is going to take a lot. You'll get a student every now and then that's just able to just do it. But I mean, and this is not to say that these students are lacking in skills, because they have so many other skills that I did not have at this time. But you know, even something as simple as one of our org scholars was going to, I said, you need to write a thank you note. Let's write a thank you note to this person so you can make this connection who's donating money for this. And he said, okay. And I said, well, do you need stationery? Or do you know how to address an envelope, like a physical? He did not, by the way. He did not. So, you know, I was like, okay, well, the addresses, those steps that like help folks, you have to do whatever it is. And eventually they'll take over. I mean, they'll learn these things, but you can't assume that there is a level of like knowledge that's there. Sometimes you might be the person to help them get that level of knowledge.
The only thing I would add is sometimes the next helping them understand the next step is not so scary. What came to mind when you asked that question, I remember having a conversation with Tyler after he sensed his call on a mission trip, sitting on top of a roof. I remember that very well. They were doing some repair work, and he and some others sitting on top of the roof. And he when he came back from that trip, I remember him coming by my house and telling me, he's like, I think I might be sensing this call, but I'm going to be a high school band director. And I said, okay, but can't you see both? I said, so don't, you know, the struggle was, I'm going to be in music education. He was, you know, planning to pursue music education. I said, there's no better prep for a music minister than a wide music education degree. And in fact, that's what I did for undergrad. I said, that's fine. You can have all that ready and see how God takes you in that next step. So helping make the next step not so dramatic might be the best thing you can do.
Yeah, I think that Larry nailed it. As much as I would love to see my studio of church music majors be brimming, I think we can't argue that the music ed degree is also a great track for a student to go in, especially if they are considering the possibility of bivocational music ministry. And if they feel called to both, I feel called to the academy and the church also. I get it. And so helping them find ways to empower them to live into their call, whichever way that may be. And one of the things that during this whole process of thinking about call is just taking the holy hocus pocus out of the call. It is absolutely sacred and wonderful and a move of the Spirit. But really, calling comes down to three main things. Does the student or the person, or do we have the skills needed to accomplish the mission? Is there a need for it? And has God given us a desire to go to it? That really is the essence of a calling. And if we can say, hey, I'm so thrilled that that's happened in your life, let us continue to find a way to live into that. And the next step is always, in this situation, education, right? Helping them get there, find those scholarships, and all those kind of things. And to piggyback on what Philippa said, one of the things that I've realized literally in the last 2 years, it is no longer dealing with the student as much, it's dealing with the parents. The parents have become the primary go-between with the admissions office and the student, right? They are the intermediary, and that has not been the case in the first 10 years of my teaching experience, but it is absolutely the case with most students now. It's the parents. And so helping the parents go through the FAFSA process, helping the parents go through the scholarship process, helping them go, especially if they're first-gen college students. It is going to take some of your time, but it is so worth it. And I think that is what we would all say is it's worth it for us as music ministry professionals to find ways to, as Doug said it earlier, be a talent scout in some ways and find ways to encourage and to breathe life into that calling if we can, blow onto the embers of that calling so that we can see these students live into something that we love so much, and that's serving the church and the congregation through music and worship ministry. So, y'all have anything else?
Just one thing that came to me during our worship time. Just like Eli, he was the one that helped Samuel understand what the call was. So we, for a theological undergirding of what we're talking about, we need to be Eli.
Thanks. Thank you. Thanks to all three of y'all.